Here at the Fantasy Football Fanalist Podcast, we love our partner Underdog Fantasy. And if you haven't played on Underdog, get on there now, download the app, and we've got a special promo code for you. Use the promo code FFF, and you can get a 100% deposit match up to $100 if you use the promo code FFF. Download the app. We love playing it. There's the big board but SuperFlex out that Josh and I are going to be drafting tonight. Make sure you get in there if you want. We'll get started in about 15 minutes, maybe less. Stay posted. But if you haven't joined, I'll use the promo code FFF. We will. We're really excited to dive into some strategy. And thanks, Josh, for making it.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited. I mean, it's always a good day in the industry when you finish your day with a nice little underdog draft, considering it's just, even if I had the day off, it's 5 p.m. Pacific where I am, I'd probably have a draft going on before dinner. So, you can't hate what we're about to do. It's going to be fun, talk some strategy. And I like that it's a brand new format. It's the Wild West. I don't think there's ever really been a big SuperFlex Best Ball tournament with half PPR. So we're gonna give the people what they want.
All right. Before we get into it, let's do the intro video.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Fanalists Podcast, powered by Underdog Fantasy and presented by Fantasy Data, home to some of the industry's most accurate rankings.
And welcome into a special edition of the Fantasy Football Fanalist Podcast. Tonight, joining us, Josh Larky, Director of Analytics for Player Profiler. Josh, how are you doing this evening? It's more like all early afternoon, early evening for you on the West Coast, but for us East Coasters, the sun is set. It is cold and snowy. Tell me about the California weather.
So as you can see, we got the light coming in. It is still nice and bright out in sunny San Diego. It was a brisk 65 degrees today. So I had to huddle up indoors, get my coating in, get my fantasy football in, but ready to talk some strategy and draft. Doing well, and as always, thanks for having me. I feel like we've had a nice run ever since it turned out that we were very far apart on Cam Akers last year. So I feel like that was a fun thing that happened to me in this industry, is getting to hang out with you, hang out with Billy, and kind of bond over having different takes. So let's do it.
That was one of my favorite podcasts in the offseason, was the Darrell Henderson versus Cam Akers debate that we had. And unfortunately, we couldn't get a happy resolution. And that's sometimes how it works in this industry, is we don't get some nice little bowed answer and no receipts really that can be waved in other people's faces.
Yeah, it was kind of BS, because I thought I was winning. I was like, see, Cam Akers is a total bell cow. So then, of course, Darrell Henderson comes back in the Super Bowl and he's lining up out wide, and he's what was he, number two or three on the team in targets for the game? So at this point, it couldn't be.
He was heavily used coming right off the IR. It was surprising.
Yeah, I thought I was winning. I was like, oh, Cam Akers, total bell cow. And then all of a sudden, Henderson's like, oh, I'm just going to take 2/3 of the valuable touches in the Super Bowl. We'll let Cam Akers run right up the middle. So now I don't even know where to stand. So it's going to be a long off season.
It's a fun off season when we can do some big board but SuperFlex drafts. And this dropped less than a week ago on Underdog Fantasy with SuperFlex, and Billy and I have done one of these drafts live before. But for those who haven't watched that video, the SuperFlex draft is a little bit different than your normal big board drafts or Best Ball Mania or any of those others. As Josh, you mentioned before, this is pretty much one of a kind type of draft, a half PPR. You start one quarterback, but you can also start a second quarterback in the SuperFlex. And this changes the strategy in a big way, And we, as you mentioned earlier as well, this is kind of like the Wild West. This is not charted, very well charted territory, but you have done some research over this first week. What are some takeaways from your research that would be of great value to those viewers and listeners as we prepare for this big board but SuperFlex draft?
So I think there's two big things at play that I noticed through my research. So one of them is the importance of quarterback. And obviously quarterback's important. It's SuperFlex. You're probably wanting to start a quarterback in your SuperFlex spot. But not only is it SuperFlex, but it's half PPR. There's no tight end premium. It's not like FFPC, which I feel like was kind of the main place to SuperFlex Best Ball Draft before Underdog launched their tournament. And there it's PPR with a tight end premium. So there's a lot of players scoring a lot more fantasy points. Whereas on Underdog, this really boosts the quarterback because half PPR means everyone but quarterback will be scoring less. Quarterback unaffected. So you really want a quarterback in those spots, especially because of bye weeks. And I think that's one thing I underestimated was just how low quarterback scoring is during bye weeks. There's really just not that many quarterbacks that are starting games during a few weeks each season. So you really want to make sure that you can get strong quarterback scores during those bye weeks. Because if it's, think about like week 7 last year, where Prescott is on bye, Herbert's on bye. There were, 6 decent quarterbacks on bye, 32 teams. If you take out, say there's 6 good quarterbacks, now you have 26 quarterbacks, 12 teams to start 2 quarterbacks. So next thing you know, there's people that are going to have maybe a bottom of the barrel quarterback in their SuperFlex or even just a non-quarterback there. So that's why I think that's really important. You want to lock up quarterback. If you can be getting 15 to 25 points in your SuperFlex when your opponents are having a receiver or running back get you 8 to 10 points, that's a huge advantage if you have 2, 3, 4 of those heavy bye weeks where you can capitalize. And then the other one is that there's no longer 3 starting receiver spots. They essentially took away a starting receiver spot and made it a SuperFlex. So there's still the normal flex, and they basically just plucked the receiver and said, oh, nope, start 2 receiver, and it's SuperFlex. And that changes the entire calculus among wide receiver because you're no longer worrying about going 3 deep at receiver. You're going 2 deep. And if you look at how wide receivers score across the NFL, the replacement level that a receiver needs to beat to enter your lineup, it gets a little higher. And suddenly these random fringe receivers just aren't actually ever cracking your lineup. If you just, like, if you're loading up on receivers and you're getting all like these 8-point weeks, 10-point weeks, that's not really going to enter. You just need 2. You're just going to have 2 guys that give you 15 points, and that's all you need. You don't need to worry about like, oh, we have to make sure, like, am I shoring up my 3rd week with the 8-point receiver? What's going on there? No. That's a quarterback giving you 20 fantasy points. So suddenly not having to worry about, oh, my wide receiver 3, how's he doing? Do I have enough depth? Totally changes everything. So it really devalues the receiver position, inflates the running back and tight end position, just because suddenly you can start the same amount of running backs and receivers. Tight end is now 1/2 receiver instead of a 3rd. And then quarterback obviously boosted. So very interesting how receiver has actually been immensely devalued in this format.
Yeah, and that's one of the trends that we've seen change, I think, from the beginning of the big board draft. The big board, but SuperFlex draft, like that first day or first 2 days, quarterbacks were not being as valued as much. And so you were able to get, I remember Lamar Jackson mid-2nd round or 3rd round. Like, give that back to me, But I think the market is starting to catch up, but I wonder how much chaos is going to be entering today because we had 2 big pieces of quarterback news today, and that was Russell Wilson being traded to Denver and, of course, Aaron Rodgers re-signing in Green Bay. We'll end with those 2 notes, and then we'll jump into the draft. So those who are listening and wanting to join in, we'll get started here in just a second after we talk about those. But I think like not much is going to change for the Green Bay front. I think that just is like it's security, and maybe Rodgers bumps up a little bit. But I think that Russell Wilson is now a back end, if not middle, first round consideration in these drafts. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, I don't think the Rodgers news changes much. I think the Packers ADPs was kind of assumed Rodgers was staying there. And the beat reporters out of Green Bay have kind of been pounding the table that Rodgers and Adams were both staying. I think one of them I heard on a podcast, and they said there's basically a 90% or higher chance that both Rodgers and Adams are in Green Bay for 2022. Certainly looks like that's happening. Adams going to get tagged, or actually he didn't get tagged, so I guess he'll probably get extended. Right? Did he get tagged?
I think it's impending. I think the plan is to tag him.
Okay, I didn't read into that one too much because I was just like, oh, it's all right. Like, he's staying there. I think the Russ, like you said, that's big news. Because if you look at Russell Wilson, every year he's one of the most efficient quarterbacks, very high touchdown percentage, high yards per attempt, decent completion percentage. He can scramble. Everything is there for an absolutely elite quarterback. What was holding him back was the play calling. It was kind of amazing that a quarterback who had Russell Wilson, that he had DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and they insisted on running Chris Carson up the middle until he hurt his neck and maybe has to retire. So it really seemed suboptimal. Denver, thinner air, the ball can travel further. Russell Wilson, arguably the best deep ball in NFL history. And he's going to have Sutton, Judy, Tim Patrick. They're really loaded there. Albert Hamler. Yeah, I was going to say KJ Hamler tore his ACL early enough in the season. He's probably stretching the field. Javante Williams gets a nice little bump now that we know that this is going to be a well above average offense. And then I think just as fans of football, we should like this. Sure, it means some bad NFC teams will make the playoffs, but during the regular season, it makes it so much more fun when you're going to get 2 games a year, Russ versus Herbert, 2 games a year, Russ versus Mahomes. I mean, this is very exciting. We're going to get some Russ Burrow games. It's going to be a really, really good next few years for fans of football during the regular season to see how that AFC West plays out. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, the quality of the product is going to improve significantly. It does leave a lot of questions for Seattle. Don't know who's going to be quarterback there. Drew Lock was part of the package, but I don't have a lot of optimism that he's going to be the starting quarterback there. They probably use that number 9 overall pick on a quarterback. That seems to be, looking at what Cody Carpentier has done at Player Profiler, that there seems to be some quarterback rustling around that spot. So, I think that it's better for the game. I think it's good for Russ's career. We saw a billboard that Schefter just tweeted out where out of Denver where it says, "Let Russ cook." That's already what that's what the people want in Denver.
Give the people what they want.
All right. Well, we're going to talk more about these and dive deeper in while we're drafting, though. So let me get the Underdog up here, and then let me know when you're ready to enter, and
I'm ready.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, and we're waiting for 5 people.
I think we're in the same draft room.
This is good.
I have yet to do. It's going to happen at some point because it's a numbers game. But I'm going to do one of us. We're going to do one of these live streams and enter different draft rooms, and it's going to be kind of a mess. I guess we had that.
That's what I was afraid of. That's what I was afraid of.
So I wasn't live. Cody Carpentier was live. He was doing a show, and I was with 7 or 8 other player profiler type people in another draft room. And he thought he was with us. And then 2 rounds in, he realized he was with total random people that he didn't know. So on air, he had to completely improvise. So I did not envy him in that moment.
All right. Well, let's see here. Once we get started, we are waiting for one more person. This is actually pretty quickly that it's filled, although I suppose this is prime time.
Yeah, it's probably a good time. Like East Coast off work, West Coast now getting off work.
Yeah, I think that'll work for us. One person, probably a few of the viewers and listeners are getting joined here in a moment. But we've seen some shifts now, Josh. Earlier this week, so even yesterday, it was Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Jonathan Taylor, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson. Jonathan Taylor has now fallen to 5th. How much higher are quarterbacks going to get pumped up? Is Kyler Murray going to make it over Jonathan Taylor by week's end, do you think?
I think he will. So I'm pulling up my research quickly. So if we're looking at, I just did a quick little best ball points added type calculation in a Twitter thread as I was exploring this strategy. And Jonathan Taylor was the most valuable player that you could have in this format last year. However, you don't see many running backs in the top 20. There's a few. There were 10 quarterbacks. There were 10 quarterbacks that were on yours. Was it 7? Yeah. So there were 10.
It was 7 running backs and 10 quarterbacks that you tweeted out in that tweet.
Got it. So there were more quarterbacks that were in the top 10. Oh, I'm jealous. And then on top of more quarterbacks, this was actually a really bad quarterback year this past year, just in terms of health. So we had Kyler Murray missing a lot of time, Lamar missing a lot of time, Russ missing a lot of time, Lance wasn't playing. So there were Fields wasn't playing much. There were so many quarterbacks that looked like they would be fantasy studs that really just weren't even playing a full season. So I think there's a very good chance that we have 12, 15 quarterbacks in the top 20 this year with some better health, just because it seems like running back, the bell cow, getting a little phased out of the NFL. And then receiver, aside from Cooper Kupp, Davante Adams barely in the top 20. And that's basically it at receiver. I think, or maybe Debo snuck in there. I'm looking. So really thin at receiver in this format. There were no tight ends in the top 20. It was pretty bleak outside of quarterback.
All right. Well, I have the 101, and I'm not going to deviate from ADP. It's going to be Josh Allen here. You mentioned quarterbacks being in the top, and Josh Allen's been the quarterback one the last 2 seasons. He rushes, he passes. We anticipate some wide receiver upgrades. Christian Kirk double date incoming.
Oh, I would love Christian Kirk there. Yeah, I think Allen should be the consensus 101. He's got the ceiling. He's got the floor. It's hard to see him failing. So,
and then Herbert, and then Mahomes goes at 3. Billy took Mahomes, and then Jackson, and you took Kyler over Jonathan Taylor. So fulfilling your prophecy almost.
Yeah, I think Kyler, he's been the QB3 and the QB4 the past 2 years per game. And it almost feels like he's underwhelmed each season. So I think he's just got this really nice upside. I don't think you can poke too many holes with those first 5 quarterbacks. They're just really studs. My hot take that I've been testing out is that Lamar should be the QB2 behind Josh Allen because he scored the most fantasy points per game in NFL history in 2019, over 28. And his supporting cast is better. There's no more Willie Snead, no more Mark Ingram. It's now J.K. Dobbins. It's now Rashad Bateman. So
we saw a pass rate for Baltimore increase significantly last season. And if that keeps up with an improved Bateman, as you mentioned, Marquise Brown is still there. Mark Andrews is healthy. Like, you have a lot of reasons for optimism. I don't think it's that hot of a take.
Yeah, I just think that the combo of the rushing floor and potentially the passing ceiling, I think it's kind of unknown just how well Lamar can do. But we already know the floor is really nice. So I think that's what's enticing about him is that Herbert and Mahomes, I think they're going to crush. These are the kind of quarterbacks, they're always going to have a high touchdown rate. They play in very fast-paced, pass-heavy offenses. But I think Lamar has a chance to be close enough with the passing that when he's giving you 10 rush attempts a game, I think he definitely has a higher ceiling. I just think it's more likely Herbert and Mahomes are probably going to outscore Lamar ultimately come season's end. But I just think Lamar has enough of a ceiling that in a tournament like this, I think there's a strong case for him at QB2.
And this is a format which rewards rushing quarterbacks in particular, because 6 points for a rushing touchdown, but only 4 points for a passing touchdown. Some leagues have 6-point passing touchdown, and then those the pocket passers like Joe Burrow and I know I don't want to peg Mahomes as a pocket passer strictly, but he's more pocket passer than, of course, Lamar Jackson or the Jalen Hurts of the world. So, I think the rushing quarterbacks in this type of format in particular are even more valuable and perhaps are undervalued.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people still they get a little too caught up in how good the real life quarterback is. So I think that's kind of a nice edge that we can always take advantage of. It's why you see guys like Lance, Hurts, Fields. There we go, taking Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts, good real life quarterback? Maybe not. Good fantasy quarterback? Jalen Hurts had Jalen Reagor running a full snap share and Quez Watkins running a nice full share of routes. Those guys were running a ton of routes for him. He was the QB6 per game last year. That is the importance of rushing, is that Jalen Hurts can have a bad supporting cast and have a bad passing season and still be the QB6.
Well, not only was he the QB6, but he did it consistently. Like, I think it was the first 10 weeks or so, he was always a top 10 quarterback. He didn't fall outside of that. And then at the end of the year, he was a little more inconsistent. But not only was he giving you high ceiling weeks, he was consistently doing it. And, that's an undervalued attribute, I think, that you can trust when you're drafting a player. He's going to produce for you. So I'm up here.
And you see Billy taking Mahomes Hill for the stack.
Oh, man. Yeah.
First big stack of the day.
I know. Well, I'm not going to not stack either.
Second big stack of the day.
Second big stack of the day. But I didn't like taking wide receiver there, but the stack was there. And I'm going to go Dalvin Cook here. You sent out I think you're more of an influencer than you give yourself credit for, Larky, because when you sent out the tweet, I think it was yesterday, that there's no reason to draft Javante Williams over Joe Mixon. And now we see that Joe Mixon has eclipsed Javante Williams in ADP. You are officially an ADP mover. Let's add that to your badge here on Underdog Fantasy.
Yeah, I noticed that. I chuckled this morning because I saw it. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then the news broke of Russ to Denver, and I thought, I don't even know how I feel about this now. I think Javante and Mixon got a lot closer, but I'm still going to take my guy. It's just really hard for me not to take Joe Mixon. We've got a total bell cow getting 20 to 25 touches a game on one of the best offenses in football. The offensive line is most likely getting a significant upgrade for this season compared to last season. They got a lot of cap space. I think it's going to be kind of like a Chargers situation where the Chargers, they get some cap space, bring in a couple free agents, draft a tackle. I think that is kind of the Bengals' future. And yeah, I'm very excited about Mixon. I feel like he finally did what everyone thought he couldn't do. And now people go, oh, no, I need to see it again. Even though he was just the RB3 in fantasy. I mean, what more do you need? The guy catches passes. He gets 100% of the goal line touches. He's going to be out on the field 20 plus times a game, touching the ball. Love Joe Mixon.
There were 4 games last season that Joe Mixon was the number 2 scoring running back on the week. And the Javante Williams truthers will be like, well, he never had a number 1. Javante Williams had a number 1, blah, blah, blah. and that's silly. Although at the same time, that was the only full-time start that Javante Williams got, that he was the number 1 overall. And the rumors are leaning that Melvin Gordon will return. But thinking about how Javante Williams' workload could trend upward, like we saw in year 2 for the Green Bay Packers, second-round running back A.J. Dillon increased from almost a negligible role to a 50-50 split. And already it was Javante 50-50 splitting with Gordon. It could turn into a 65-70 split. And in that instance, is Javante Williams a first-round consideration?
So I think it probably will be like a 65-35 type of situation, or 70-30. generally these talented running backs with good draft capital improve their role in year 2, assuming that they did well in year 1, which Javante did. I think he's got a pretty high ceiling. As we saw, he was the RB1 that 1 week he was a starter, but I do wonder what the target share is going to look like. Russell Wilson is still fairly mobile, even in his 30s. He is 1 year removed from over 500 rushing yards, which he did in 2020. I don't think people give Russ credit for just how fast and mobile he is. And that often affects the running backs when it comes to catching passes. There just haven't been a lot of Seattle running backs that are heavy pass catchers over the years. Sure, we haven't really had a Javante Williams type talent around Russ, but I still think he's mobile enough that it's in consideration. I think that will probably hurt Javante's ceiling a little bit, but I think where we're at and where he's going in the draft right now, I think it's a great spot for Javante. I think he and Mixon now look a lot more similar. I think I still slightly prefer Mixon just because it's so obvious what Mixon can do because we just saw it. And I think his situation improves for next year. But I think you can go either way.
I don't think Zach Taylor is going to be running as much Samaje Perine up the middle.
Yeah, I think after the Super Bowl, it's going to haunt him. I don't think Samaje Perine will get another 3rd and 1 carry for the rest of his career, wherever he is. I think that smell, it's going to be tough to get rid of that stench of the Samaje Perine 2 failed 3rd and 1 runs during that game, both of which killed drives.
That's why I don't hate taking Chris Evans like your last pick, because he had already scored a couple touchdowns last year. He was slowly integrated. He is a pass catching back and has some good agility scores. Doesn't have great draft capital. We know his role. It's going to be behind Mixon, but that's why I kind of lean Evans. Samaje Perine, before coming to Cincinnati, was viewed as like a plotter for the Washington football team. He wasn't viewed as like a dynamic back in any stretch, like a Peyton Barber comp, just another guy to run up the middle. And he couldn't even do that in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, agreed. So this pick felt kind of gross. I took Hopkins. It's for the stack. I think it's early for a receiver. This is around his ADP. And because it's a tournament, I think stacking is important when you can. I would have taken Waller if I didn't have Kyler, I think, or Higgins. I like both of them a little more. But I don't think there's anything wrong with taking Hopkins right around ADP. Very unlikely he makes it back to me. It wasn't a reach. And I mean, if Kyler really exceeds ADP, good chance Hopkins is catching double-digit touchdowns. So I think it just made sense, but it's definitely not a pick I love.
So, yeah, I've been avoiding Hopkins at ADP. We just saw his target share decrease prior to injury. That was a red flag for me. And it seemed like the Arizona Cardinals were intentionally getting everybody involved. They were targeting AJ Green. They were funneling passes to Rondell Moore. They were getting Christian Kirk his due. Everybody and their mother was getting passes. Zach Ertz, when he came on later in the season, everybody was getting targeted. Now, granted, most of Ertz's production came when Hopkins was out, but it seemed as though they weren't willing to commit as much of a target share to Hopkins. So I think that was an issue. And also, prior to this year, DeAndre Hopkins had played through almost every injury that he had ever endured in his NFL career. Like, I think he had missed one total game due to injury prior to 2021. And now we start to see a player who's in his he's going to turn 30 this year, who's suffering injuries, lower body injuries that may tend to recur. And he's already been fighting through injuries over the last however many years. It's kind of an avoid for me at ADP. I don't see, I'd rather take a T. Higgins or DJ Moore at that spot. Sorry for the Hopkins hate, but
oh no, I'm the same. That's why I said I really love this pick. I basically only take Hopkins if I have Kyler, since I think the idea of stacking is that if I'm taking Kyler, I think he has a good chance to throw for 35 touchdowns. And if I'm taking him there in this tournament, thinking he's going to throw 35 touchdowns, why not 10 to 12 to Hopkins? So that's kind of the idea behind it, and why I would agree with you. I think Hopkins kind of an only take him around ADP if you're stacking with Kyler in this format, because I think there are a lot of warning signs. So with you 100%, we can make fun of that pick together, since I think that is
fair enough.
It's like what I was talking to someone the other day about Gabe Davis, and I was like, Gabe Davis he's basically like, if I have Josh Allen in one of these drafts, and if Gabe Davis falls a lot, then I'm taking Gabe Davis. So,
well, I might be damned taking Gabe Davis earlier than I want to. I even put out a video on Fantasy Data about how Gabe Davis is like the biggest sell of the offseason, and only things can go wrong for Gabe Davis. He put up the same stats as he did last year, and he only scored 4 touchdowns after Tyrann Mathieu left the game with injury. And he's like the glue of the Kansas City defense. Like, look, I just don't get the Gabe Davis love.
Yeah, I'm the same. So that's why I was like, hey, Hopkins, Gabe Davis, there's a few players where I'm only going to take them generally when they're falling and I get the stack. I'm never excited, never clamoring to take those guys unless it is the stack. Wheeler knows I really like Travis Etienne. Thank you for that, sir. Makes this pick much more difficult.
Snipe.
Yeah,
Etienne is a target. He was one of my most drafted from the big board tournament before this SuperFlex tournament. He was one of the most drafted for me, and I see him as the DeAndre Swift of last year. Like, he's going to be on a bad team. He's a pass catching capable back coming off an injured season. If you remember rookie year, DeAndre Swift suffered injuries that limited him. And like, this is an offense that is going to involve Etienne early and often. James Robinson had an Achilles injury, I believe, late season. I think week 15. We don't know what his status is going to be. So there's a lot of concerns there. Grumble. Well, all right. Y'all are making me do this. Okay. Okay, so I went Mike Evans because of the ADP drop. I think that they do end up getting a gunslinger quarterback. Looking at what Bruce Arians has done in the past, he's always gone after a strong-armed quarterback, veteran quarterback, to get the ball down the field. That's why I kind of joked that he would bring back Ryan Fitzpatrick to the Bucs or bring back Jameis Winston to the Bucs, because those are the types of quarterbacks that Bruce Arians has been successful with in the past. Obviously Tom Brady, but also Carson Palmer. Big Ben was successful. Wasn't it? Bruce Arians was on the Colts staff for Peyton Manning, right? So you just look at the pedigree of these quarterbacks that Arians has worked with. I think fading Evans to the 7th round or end of the 6th round, beginning of the 7th round, is just too far. So, and I took Elijah Moore because I'm an Elijah Moore stan. Come at me.
Yeah, I'm with you. Evans, not really someone I'm targeting. I like Elijah Moore where he's going. I think he's got some good upside there. So I think Evans is kind of safe in that he's not gonna absolutely tank your draft. I just think it's going to be difficult when, at this point in his career, he's a little bit more of a touchdown dependent option. I think he's always going to be a nice big red zone threat. He's built like a tight end, but I think a lot of his fantasy value came from having the pass heaviest offense and Tom Brady as the quarterback. So I still think they'll probably be lean pass heavy, especially when they kept Godwin. So I think Evans will be fine, but yeah, just not someone that I think has the ability to greatly exceed ADP. Because I feel like what you kind of want in these early rounds is Elijah Moore. It's easier to see him greatly exceeding ADP. We kind of saw the upside last year, right when they finally gave him a full snap share, and it's like, oh wow, this is a wide receiver 1 caliber talent and producer. So yeah, kind of with you with your picks in terms of what you thought of them.
Now, you grabbed T. Higgins after DeAndre Hopkins. We'll backtrack a little bit. I've been on the T. Higgins train in the big board tournaments. I mean, you can blame me for driving up his ADP. I was taking him at the end of the second round, beginning of the third, stacking him with Burrow and Chase. There was one where I got the Burrow Higgins Chase stack, and it felt oh so sweet. But I like Higgins in that spot there. McLaurin as well. We've seen quarterbacks be aggressively, these veteran quarterbacks be aggressively targeted. We saw it this year already with the Broncos, and we saw it last year with Stafford. Rivera has gone on record saying that he's seen what it's taken, and there have been rumors that Washington has gone after the likes of Russell Wilson. I wonder what quarterback they are going to pair with Terry McLaurin come 2022.
Yeah, what I like about Washington is that they were trying to give up 3 firsts for Russ. So, Deshaun Watson's out there. He's not going to play in Texas. It seems like the whole league's kind of treating last year like his suspension. So, we could see Watson there. I think that would be very tantalizing for fantasy if he gets Watson. So, I don't think it can get much worse for him quarterback-wise. Again, not someone I'm necessarily targeting a ton, but when he falls and he's at pick 68, that looks like a really good spot to grab him. And now I can grab one more. We're grabbing my final quarterback. I really like getting 4 solid quarterbacks. My strategy in these has kind of been crowding out quarterback. And I think it's easier to make up production at the other positions. But quarterback, once they're gone, they're gone. And what I try and do is I try and get rid of 3 to 5 people in my draft room each draft, where I look and go, oh, you only have 2 quarterbacks? Sorry, champ. It's going to be really difficult for you to do much. So I've taken my 4 quarterbacks. I've crowded people out. I've kind of secured that I'll have a quarterback in my super flex spot, even in the bye weeks. And I think it's just really difficult to find that production elsewhere. Come tournament time, if my team advances, sure, I've got some wasted quarterback position slots, but I think that my goal is to advance a really, really, really high rate of teams in this format through. And I think right now you can still do it with quarterback, where you're just immediately giving yourself the edge over teams that are most weeks going to have a non-quarterback in that super flex spot.
Well, you said it. You spoke it into existence, Larky. And Gabe Davis is just sitting here, hanging out at pick 96, and I hate myself for it. But you know what? I'm gonna pivot. Oh, whoa, hold on. Something went wrong with my underdog. And 4 seconds. We're gonna pivot to a different stack.
Oh,
Dawson
there we
Knox.
go.
Let's go. No, I wanted, I've got my 2 tight ends. I'm set for right now. And I'm looking here. I'm not going to go Dave Davis. I'm going to make someone else take that bomb. And I'm going to go with the wide receiver 13 in fantasy points per game last season. And that was Adam Thielen.
Yeah, Thielen feels like he's probably a pretty safe pick. I think he's going to recover from the ankle surgery. I think where he's going right now is fine. I don't think you're getting more than like a wide receiver 13 finish, but I think that could very well happen again.
He's been a touchdown maker the last 2 seasons, though, and I think in a tournament style, you want touchdown makers. Like it's only half point PPR, and we saw Justin Jefferson increase his touchdowns, but it wasn't an ungodly amount of touchdowns despite the target share.
Mm-hmm. So I took Judy. I didn't love Judy prior to the trade. I was like, oh, he's on my fade list. Trade happens, and I think, Jerry Judy, pretty strong candidate to have a lot more touchdowns than he's ever had before. And we just have no idea what this offense is going to look like. And I think we can kind of think about it like the Stafford scenario last year, where I was above consensus on Woods and Kupp. And I was like, I'm not confident in which one he's going to prefer, but I can pretty much guarantee you that those guys are going to score more fantasy points as a duo than they did the year before. And I kind of feel like that with Judy, Sutton, Patrick. I'm like, I don't really know who Russ is going to love, but I'm pretty confident there's going to be overall many more fantasy points to be had there. So just start giving me pieces of that pie. Judy at 101, he's still relatively cheap. I think that ADP shoots up into the 80s in the next week or so. It'd kind of be my guess. So we'll kind of see with that, but I do think all these Broncos will rise, and that it always seems to take 3 days to a week for the ADPs to really start correcting.
Yeah, that's about right, because they'll have to average out from, although to be fair, Calvin Ridley, when his I was proud of our drafts that I did yesterday. Me and the other drafters, we all 100% of us avoided Calvin Ridley. There wasn't a player who said, you know what, I'm just going to auto draft. I'm going to leave early and just let Calvin Ridley come to me. No, like, we all stayed through the draft and nobody took him. But it's a sad state of events when you don't know. There's even more ambiguity now with who the pass catchers are going to be in that Atlanta offense. It's going to be Kyle Pitts, and the next the best receiver still on the roster right now is Olamide Zaccheaus, and that's not going to do it. You know, Russell Gage is a free agent. You've got questions behind or at running back. Mike Davis was Billy and I had a debate last offseason about Mike Davis, and let's just say I handily won that despite getting the L in the middle of the debate. But he was the prototypical dead zone running back. Yep. Older, only opportunity was in his favor. He had 4 good games and then fizzled, even though he was given the opportunity. And what really stuck out to me was in the offseason, Arthur Smith made a comment about Cordarrelle Patterson and how he was like, yeah, we have Mike Davis, but we also have this guy, Cordarrelle Patterson. And like, Patterson's also an old running back. So I thought to myself, well, why don't I take just a little bit of Cordarrelle? Not like, it's coach speak. Like, it's the middle of the offseason. What are you going to believe? But Cordarrelle Patterson ended up being a thing.
Yeah, I think with Mike Davis, it was interesting because I had a very strong take that he was a dead zone running back. I had no Mike Davis. And a lot of people were like, oh, can you articulate more on why he's a dead zone running back? And I said, okay, well, we've got the age, we've got a history of no production. Then people would say, okay, who's taking his job? I wasn't even forward thinking enough to know it was Cordarrelle Patterson, but I said, you know what? It's one of those things where I can just query in my database, look through history, and there's always another dude that takes the work. And the thing is, you don't even know who it is. I thought, one sec, I'm on the clock. Let's get this pick in. Oh, why am I going? I'm going so wide receiver heavy. I feel like people are listening to us and I talk about how you can't draft receivers. And now there's just guys where I'm like, they should be going so much earlier. So now I'm just pounding receiver. Anyway, I think that, so I thought Wayne Gallman was more likely to end up being the guy because he was younger and he just was an admirable fill-in for Saquon in 2020. But it was one of those things where I said, you know what? I'm not even that confident it's Gallman. I don't know if it's Cordarrelle Patterson. It could be somebody else. But almost every single time in history that we see a guy like Mike Davis, something happens, usually a guy you didn't see coming. It ended up being Patterson, but that's really why you just want to stay away from that archetype, is that we don't even know who it is, but through history, you know it's not Mike Davis. So it's a very interesting phenomenon where you can go, I know it's not him. I don't know who it's going to be, but you can't take him in the 5th round.
You cannot take him in the 5th round. But I'm taking Kareem Hunt and Kenny Pickett at the turn. I needed that third quarterback. You did kind of push me into a quarterback, but at the same time, I have the number 1 quarterback in Josh Allen. So I wasn't like, for me, having that stud and then having a solid middle of the pack QB2 in Mac Jones, I wasn't feeling the pressure. But I did want to get a third quarterback with a few slipping off the board over the last couple rounds. I do have my eyes on a few others, but I also have seen some of the drafts you've posted, and I know you and I see a few of them similarly. So I don't want to give away anything quite yet, but it's an interesting time because Billy's having the time of his life. Let me take a step back because he is at the 103. He's gone Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, then Saquon Barkley, and then he came back with quarterback Zach Wilson, and then Josh Jacobs, who went to him at 70. Baker Mayfield, he loves Mayfield. Darnell Mooney, he loves Mooney. Clyde Edwards-Helaire loves Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Rashad Penny,
he has the
Chase
quad
Edmonds.
stack.
Oh my god,
he's got Mahomes, CEH, Hill, Kelce. Billy has a good team.
He does have a really good team.
Also wanted to point out, we have the fabled 0 quarterback build still ongoing with Kick, Toss, Catch, who's currently on the clock, sporting the very bold 0 QB build
in a SuperFlex draft.
Color me skeptical. I don't think it can be done, but I mean, we'll see what happens. Maybe stranger things, but that's kind of my strategy with the 4 QB build is I'm crowding some people out. And I also know that during the bye weeks, my team's probably just scoring a lot more points than some other teams. And then I'm giving up some points during the non-bye weeks because I have a lot tied up at quarterback, but I get that kind of unique advantage in those bye weeks. So that's kind of my hope with this type of strategy is that I'm just scoring so many more points than every other team for a several week period, and that can get me to the next round.
Yeah, that's, I mean, the quarterback value it's a big difference because, as you mentioned, the best ball points added, if you hit on one of those top 10 quarterbacks, it's so much more significant over some of the lower tiers. Like if we remember last year, Sam Darnold, after he was traded to Panthers, was skyrocketing upwards. We all knew he was not a good quarterback, he was not an objectively good quarterback, and even changing scenery wasn't good. The first 4 weeks, he was like the quarterback 5 overall, something like that. But
something ridiculous.
It was, he was scoring rushing touchdowns, but also one of the things that I looked at, he was averaging 8 or 9 yards per pass attempt. And it was starkly different compared to the last 2/3 of the season where he was averaging 4 or 5 or 6. And when you're not getting the ball down the field and you're not hitting your Robbie Andersons of the world in that type of offense, of course you're going to go cold. So Matt Rule, I think he's on the hot seat. And if he's not on the hot seat, I don't know what to tell the Panthers, but.
Yeah, I think that was one of the stranger storylines last year was Matt Rule somehow, how is he still there? This team has been so poorly managed. And I mean, at this point, they basically need Deshaun Watson, or it's going to look like the last few years where we're just, they were going nowhere, basically. It's kind of like there's a lot of teams out there where they seem to have a multi-year stretch where they're going nowhere. They're not very fun. And I think it's kind of what the Panthers will be if they don't get Watson in the next few weeks. So we'll see what happens. Like the Mariota pick, I think Konami quarterback, good chance to start a decent amount of games in 2022. And I think at this point, what is there? You think Teddy Bridgewater is probably the only quarterback left that I would put the over-under game started at 5.5. Right?
Yeah.
Would you say I think he's probably the only quarterback that I would fairly safely say is going to be playing 6+ games this next season?
Who's Teddy playing for next year?
It's a great question. I think he could actually fit in with a lot of teams and do just fine. I mean, if Washington has him, I think the team is fine. I don't
view him as much of an upgrade over Heineke, though.
Yeah, I think he's better than Heineke. I don't think he's that much better, but I do think he's more stable, more consistent. So I think he could be fine in Washington. It'd be pretty hilarious if he went back to Carolina after they paid for his salary last year.
Just like Cam Newton.
I think Teddy Bridgewater in general can run a competent enough offense where he's not really elevating, but he's maintaining maybe a little below that, which for the NFL is fine with the right supporting cast. It's just, I think the only place that Teddy Bridgewater could actually be on a potential playoff team, maybe the Steelers. The only one I can really think of where if you put him in Pittsburgh, they made the playoffs this past year with Big Ben, and that there's a chance he's an upgrade on Big Ben. But
only a chance.
Yeah, I think he's probably most likely better than Big Ben. So I think at this point, yeah, Bridgewater really the only quarterback where I could confidently say this guy's starting some games in 2022. Nobody else am I like, oh yeah, that guy's definitely starting some games in 2022.
Yeah, I think at value, I wonder if Mariota is a better value than Mitchell Trubisky, because now Trubisky is skyrocketing up boards now that he's tied to Brian Dable and the New York Giants as a competition piece in that quarterback room for Daniel Jones. Like Mitchell Trubisky has been boom or bust over the last 4 years that he's been a starter, but like Mariota was the quarterback 12 in fantasy points per game back in 2016, and back in 2018 when he had a full season, there were 5 games where he was a top 8 weekly finisher in quarterback. So you talk about a little bit of mobility. Mariota, that was like one of his calling cards in college for Oregon. He was pretty mobile, and he had a few games where he was rushing for 35, 40, 50 yards even. So we saw kind of his usage in Vegas when he was he had to take over for Derek Carr this past year. He had one game where he had a rushing score. In 2020, he was the quarterback 8 weekly finish. So I wonder if he might also be a value. I know that Mario is a free agent. He's looking around, but he might be a cheaper option too, especially if Mr. Trubisky gets off the market quickly.
Yeah, I really like Mariota at this point with his ADP. I was all on the Trubisky hype train the last couple of weeks. I was like, you have to be taking Trubisky at the end of your 1 quarterback draft. You have to take him in your 2 quarterback drafts with this format. You need Trubisky. The ADP's corrected. Trubisky is being treated like he's a fringe starter. And now it's like, okay, well, Mariota's not that different than Trubisky. You just didn't happen to hear the blaring rumor of him to New York, but teams are thinking of Mariota as a potential starter. He's just way, way cheaper. So I really liked that Mariota pick, since any game that he's starting, he's a threat to enter your best ball lineup.
Now you've gone over the last few picks, Hunter Henry and Zach Ertz, because you needed some tight end depth, and both of them are PPR / touchdown makers. Hunter Henry making more of his mark in the end zone. Zach Ertz had commanded a pretty significant target share when he was in Arizona, and was a value, I thought, in best ball drafts and in season long leagues last year. You could get him at the end of drafts last year for free. Rachaad White showed out at the combine, and I wonder if he gets the draft capital to help, but he's a supreme athlete. It showed out. And Curtis Samuel, like, what could have been? Like, just spent the whole season injured.
Yeah, I think Samuel, we could look back a few years from now, and last year was just an abomination. He was injured the whole time, preseason, during the season. He's been nothing but good for best ball his whole career. He's got sub 4.4 wheels. There's just not much else in Washington. Logan Thomas, who even knows if he's ready for the start of the season? Terry McLaurin, that's about it. So I think Samuel, good opportunity. He's got the contract. I really like my Rachaad White pick, and I really like your Brian Robinson pick. 2 guys that I expect to both rise quite a bit in ADP. They both got size. They're both athletic. And I think they're both going on day 2.
That's going to be a big deal for Robinson. He's been one of my sleeper running backs. When I had heard that you mentioned he's going to go on day 2, like running backs who go day 2, that's interesting to me, because a team is investing pretty significant draft capital. And like, think about the backups anywhere. Like, the Jacksonville needs help with backup to Etienne. New York Giants may be looking for a new running back if they trade Saquon Barkley. Like, there are real legitimate needs that will be coming up very shortly. And a lot of these running backs, Rachaad White, Brian Robinson, a few others that I won't name so that possibly I can snag them later, could be of great value on teams that Tampa Bay, for instance, could be a team that needs running back help if they don't re-sign Leonard Fournette.
Yeah, I've actually really liked doing some late running back picks in these drafts. I think there's a lot of really good candidates to have some big spike weeks towards the end of these drafts. Like you just took Keyshawn Vaughn right there. Vaughn is a candidate to be the starting running back in Tampa Bay. There's there's actually a ton of guys. I feel like the other positions really thin out at this stage of the draft. Yet I look and there's not that many receivers that I think will be crazy difference makers. Not a lot of tight ends that I think are necessarily going to be crazy difference makers. But when it comes to running back, I'm like, oh, there's a plethora of guys here. You just took Zamir White. So many guys that could end up giving you 5 or 6 spike weeks during the season. So, really like that pick. There's one guy I've got
you
queued
mentioned
up.
So you have a Code Breaker podcast through RotoUnderworld, and on there, I want to give you a little plug too, that you've done a little research not only on the best ball streets, but in particular on the rookies, and how, especially in the big board drafts, a lot of people were undervaluing the rookies. And now we've seen rookie ADP climb because of the combine, because we've gotten more information. But like Breece Hall was being drafted, what was it, almost running back 30 at one point?
He's still being drafted too late. Yeah. Oh, just kidding. He's gone up a lot. He's RB 19 now. Getting better, but still not where he should be.
Like these are, if you're taking shots on running backs late, like what in your research you shared on that podcast that there were, anywhere between 2 and 3 usually of these players, these rookies that not only just outperformed their ADP, but became usable, viable fantasy options per position. Obviously not tight ends as much, but in running backs and wide receivers in particular.
Yeah, so I went into that podcast, into that research. I knew there were some good rookies out there. I just knew intuitively. I've done this enough to know they were going too late, but I didn't really know exactly how too late. And I kind of went in with the thought that the receiver that's really where the arbitrage happens. You have to get these receivers. And it was actually kind of fun to do the research and realize, yes, the receivers are going too late, but more so than that, it's really the running backs in particular that smash. And that there's often 2, 3, 4 running backs each year as rookies that end up being top 15, top 20 running back per game. There's often multiple of them. Even if you think it's a weak running back class, there's often a few guys. Like, I think a good example, remember 2019, terrible running back class. And what happens? Montgomery, few spike weeks. Jacobs, a lot of spike weeks. Miles Sanders came on strong at the end. It just always seems like even when you think it's a bad running back class, there's always multiple guys where maybe they come out of nowhere, but next thing you know, you go, oh, wow, that guy had quite a few spike weeks. And that really made me go, okay, I'm going to draft a ton of these rookie running backs. That's why on my team, I've got Rachaad White. You've got a few yourself with Robinson, Zamir White. I mean, you got to get some rookie running backs. You just don't know.
Look, the rookie running back train may not stop for me. Okay. We will see how many are available that I'm interested in, but that's like thinking about what spike weeks Khalil Herbert gave last year. Like David Montgomery was out a few weeks and Khalil Herbert took over and was as good as David Montgomery. So the replacement level for the spike weeks, like it's volume based. And if you can get players like that, like I know he's more PPR than anything, but like James Cook, who improved his stock, I thought, from the combine. And now I'm just taking some rookies late because I want to. But Justin Ross, I'm also interested if he gets on the Jacksonville Jaguars, for instance, and goes back to Trevor Lawrence. We've seen what the college chemistry can do to Waddle, and of course Burrow to Chase most recently as 2 examples, and the new one, Lawrence to Ross.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm looking right now. I've just been pounding running back. I think I'm just going to keep it going. You can't have too much of a good thing. We're just going to keep taking running backs. I'm doing a quick search. Do you know how big Jerome Ford is? Was he big enough? It's good. We're doing live weight. Was he over 200 pounds? Oh, Jerome Ford's a 220-pound back.
210.
What did he run in the 40?
4.46, 86th percentile.
Perfect. Welcome to the team, Jerome Ford. Where are you? Oh, it's too early for you? It's all right. We're taking Jerome Ford.
Screw it.
There we go. Let's add a rookie. I was going to say, I felt like Jerome Ford was a size speed specimen. I was right. Perfect. Jerome Ford, welcome to the team. 19th round. And this could very well be the Khalil Herbert. Who even knows? But
I like
in a tournament, you're looking for that random guy that's not even going to be on every roster who can pop. So, yeah, just give me those rookies. Roll the dice. I'm not trying to get 50th, 100th place. I'm trying to get top 10. That's where the money is. So we got Wheeler in the chat, loves Christian Watson. I agree. He's probably going to be a better in best ball type player. The size speed specimen with decent draft capital, catches a few deep bombs from whatever quarterback he's paired up with.
Imagine if the Packers draft Christian Watson. Oh, my heart would just like actually getting Aaron Rodgers, a wide receiver. I've been pounding the table for 2 decades now, and they won't draft a wide receiver. I don't think Watson would go in the first round, but you know, when they drafted Amari Rodgers, part of me was like, oh, great. They drafted a day 2 wide receiver. And then I looked closer at what Amari Rodgers brought to the table, and he was a special teams blocker, yards after catch, undersized slot guy. And I'm like, well, that's not going to help. Also, they bring in Randall Cobb, which didn't, Cobb had like left injured and everything.
Yeah, I know some people really like Amari Rodgers because that slot role is open, but I don't know. He really just showed absolutely nothing as a rookie. And if there's one thing we know about Rodgers, he's very picky. I mean, I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to put up with Amari Rodgers if he's not playing really, really well. And I don't know. We haven't even seen Rodgers do anything. He wasn't a great prospect in any of my modeling work pre-draft, post-draft. He never really popped. Didn't do anything as a rookie, even though the depth chart was horrendous. It was Adams and a bunch of bones. So at this point, you know they're taking receiver early, or else Aaron Rodgers is going to riot. So I just don't even know what his role is going to be. I think it's going to be Lazard as the wide receiver 3, someone they draft as the wide receiver 2, and probably not much Amari Rodgers. Sorry.
Well, we have breaking news here on the podcast, Larky. NFL related, not fantasy related, but the Seahawks are releasing Bobby Wagner per Adam Schefter.
Wow.
End of an era. Russ gets traded and Bobby Wagner gets cut. So
I think if you're a Seahawks fan, though, this is what you want. You want the full teardown. The Jamal Adams trade crippled them. They have not drafted particularly well for years. So I think at this point, if you're a Seahawks fan, you really want them to take a full reset, skip a quarterback this draft, absolutely suck in 2022, 2023 with a better draft class at quarterback. Then they're probably going to get pummeled in their division because the NFC West is so strong. They have a top 5 pick. Then they can get a quarterback and reset. They've got a lot of first round picks that they got from the Russ trade. I think that's what you really want if you're a Seahawks fan. Ooh, the final pick.
Yeah, who are you going to take?
I mean, my Albert Okui-Bunam final auto pick, I can no longer do. He goes way too early now. No. So I'm actually, we're live on air. I have gone with the fabled 4 quarterback, 8 running back, 6 receiver, 2 tight end build. So all the haters can stuff
very fabled.
This is I think this is a strategy that is viable in this format, really not viable in almost any other format. It is because it's half PPR with only 2 starting receivers. So because I had Hopkins, Higgins, McLaurin, Judy, Drake London, and Curtis Samuel, I thought probably going to get 2 spike weeks from them. Let me just load up on unknowns at running back, a lot of handcuffs, and cross my fingers. So I went with something different. It's a tournament. Sometimes you have to get different. Don't hate it.
Don't hate it. All right. So we did finish, and I will pull up, open a new tab, share this tab instead. And I'm going to pull up the...
Oh, you had a pretty close. I didn't realize that you went 4-7-7-2. We were almost twins. I like it. They're very, very running back heavy.
I went very rookie running back heavy, and we'll go through just recap ours, and then we'll see if anyone else in the chat really wants us to dive in, but we'll keep it short here. Josh, I'll talk about your build, and then if you want to talk about mine, and then we'll see what closure we can put on this, what bow we can put on the podcast. But you went Kyler Murray to start, and then Jalen Hurts on the way back. You got your stud quarterbacks, the rushing upside, rushing floor, and then you went Joe Mixon in round 3. We love Joe Mixon. DeAndre Hopkins, you said you were sick about it, and so was I, but the stacks are the stacks, and this is a tournament, so we want to win, and it's either Hopkins flops or he bombs, and bombs in the right way. I'm not trying to give the only outcome for DeAndre Hopkins as a failure.
He's gonna suck, or he's gonna suck.
You went T. Higgins, which made up for the Hopkins pick, and then McLaurin, I think, is the right value right now based on what we know about his situation. Jared Goff and Carson Wentz, you start bullying people in quarterback. Jerry Jeudy is climbing, but I still think he's a really good value. Jeudy was going in round 7 or 8 last year in July and August when there was so much hype about him. And so I think that's going to be climbing even more so.
He also had the high ankle sprain.
Yes.
I'm not a big Jeudy guy, but I think there is that potential because it was a lost season. The high ankle sprain pretty much will nuke your entire season. Unless you're giving it 2-3 months recovery, which they never do, you're not the same the rest of the year.
Yeah. And I mean, Jeudy, once he got lost in that, it became almost the Tim Patrick and Cortland Sutton show. Even though it wasn't effective targets to Cortland Sutton, he still had an air yard share similar to DK Metcalf. You know, that's why I think I'm more in on Cortland Sutton right now, is a deep ball and a big time alpha. That's what he was drafted to be. So I don't hate the Jeudy pick at all. I think his ADP is going to rise. I think you're still getting value at the 9th round for Jerry Jeudy. Drake London at the 10-8. Drake London still being pegged to being drafted in the 1st round. So draft capital may be there, and depends on landing spot too, may be valuable. Didn't have a great combine, if I recall correctly, but
he didn't do anything at the combine because he's still recovering. So I've just seen that he's mocked in the top 10 and don't know much about him. I know he's big. He was productive in college. Top 10 draft capital. That's all
auto
it is.
Boom in the 10th round. Hunter Henry and Zach Ertz, we mentioned before, those are 2 players that I feel they play the same position, but they're very balanced. And one is more touchdown dependent in getting the high scoring, and the other is more PPR based. But Zach Ertz, I don't know if I've heard any rumors about him re-signing in Arizona. It makes sense if he goes back there. Max Williams, who was the tight end, I think he's a free agent, but if not, he's still coming off an ACL tear. It's going to be the Zach Ertz show if he re-signs there. And we've already lauded you on the Rashad White and Curtis Samuel picks. But Ronald Jones, Jerick McKinnon, Sony Michel. All right, we're just going straight running back the rest of the way. Sony Michel, underrated pick as well. Jerick McKinnon, both of these players came on strong at the end of the season. And if they're included in the game plans for their respective teams, or if another team wants to take a flyer on Michel, like he's shown time and again, he can get 200 touches in a season.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted a mix of the unknowns with a Jerome Ford or a Trey Sermon, where we have no idea what's going to happen next year, but at least we like the Niners offense and Ford, size, speed specimen. With someone like Michel, where he's I think he's one of 4 running backs to have 200 or more carries in 3 of the past 4 years. So not a big Michel guy, but the NFL is. So I figure this late in drafts, I have a ton of Sony Michel. Kenyon Drake, probably a pretty secure role of some sort in what should be an offense that is they are constantly going to be trailing. He's going to catch I think he's going to catch a good amount of passes. The Raiders are going to be so swamped in that division. And then one other thing I'll mention with Ertz, assuming that he re-signs, we got the double stack with Hopkins and Kyler. So hopefully he re-signs, or else that I'm looking pretty weak on my stacks. So hopefully, fingers crossed on that one.
I do like the Kenyon Drake pick. He's one that I've been taking late as well. I sent it to Billy and I was like, hey, Billy, what do you think about Kenyon Drake stacking with like a Derek Carr? I think yesterday I was doing a Derek Carr, Bryan Edwards, Zay Jones, Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller stacks. And he was like, I mean, I don't hate it, whatever. And I think you mentioned that his role is secure, and that's all I want in a running back that you're getting at the end of round 18. That's nice.
So
all right.
That's my draft. All right, let's look at yours. So I saw you went 4-7-7-2, 4 quarterbacks, 7 running backs, 7 receiver, 2 tight end. We had similar builds. So pretty chalk to begin with, where if you're at the 101, I feel like you got to go Allen. Probably going to stack him with Diggs for the tournament. I like that. I think Dalvin Cook is a good pick there. I feel like he was going a little early in some of these 1 quarterback drafts, and then suddenly you look at where he's going now, and it's like, oh yeah, 2-3 turn for Dalvin Cook. Sure. Pretty much a locked and loaded high-end RB1 per game. As you know, I like the Waller pick. That's who I said. I would have taken Waller or Saquon, I think, if I didn't take Hopkins. Mac Jones, fine SuperFlex pick. I like that he's definitely starting every game, and the supporting cast is probably going to improve. So he had a good rookie year with a bad supporting cast, and I don't think that's discussed enough. That his receivers
wanted to get him there because I know that there's going to be like the stackable pieces are later. Like you don't have to worry about, did I back pick or can I back stack? Like the quarterback is going after the respective wide receivers, and no one on New England is going ahead of Mac Jones.
Yeah, what's nice is that you stacked him with Myers. Jacoby Myers, what is he going to get? 25% of Mac Jones pass attempts are going to go to him. So I think that's it's a pretty sneaky stack. I really like Myers at his ADP. There's the narrative he can't score touchdowns. That usually doesn't hold up for high target share players. So I'm not too worried. We already talked about Evans and Elijah Moore. Really like the Moore pick. Don't love the Evans pick, but when the guy falls at ADP, pretty safe bet to give you something for best ball. Knox, good to stack him with Allen. Knox, just a great candidate for double-digit touchdowns. Not sure how much else he gives you, but I don't even think at that draft slot you need much else. You're just saying, hey, when Josh Allen has a boom week, maybe 50-50 chance that Knox catches the touchdown plus. Thielen, touchdown dependent, pretty good.
Well, and I wanted Knox there too because I had Waller, who was my stud tight end, but then Dawson Knox allowed me to not take a third tight end.
Yeah, I generally like
roster space.
Yeah, I like either going 2 tight ends, or if I do 3, I really want it to be 3 later tight ends. So that's why that's why I did the Hunter Henry Zach Ertz one, is I thought, you know what, if I don't take Zach Ertz right now, I'm really going to have to take 3. And I think I can get away with Henry and Ertz where there's enough touchdown upside there. Waller, you could probably wait a little longer, but I also think Knox is the spike weeks are good enough that Knox can be flex viable because of his offense. So I think that's totally fine pick. Thielen, assuming that his surgery goes well, then good value there. Pickett, I have no idea. Don't know much about him. He's probably going to start some type of games. You got to get 3 to 4 quarterbacks, preferably 4. Helps crowd out kick, toss, catch, who ended up with 1 quarterback. I think he ended up with Carson Strong as the 1 quarterback. So no offense to this person. They're probably not going to advance. Hate to see it.
It's the rake.
I like Kareem Hunt. He is who I was waffling between when I went London. Yeah, I just think in Cleveland, we know how good he can be. And if for some reason they cut him to save like $6 million, great. He could be a starter somewhere. So,
I mean, he's led the league in rushing before, and he's over the last few years not gotten full workloads. Like, he doesn't have the tread on the tires that other bell cow backs have had. So,
Mariota, we already talked about. Good pick. I like that one. David Bell, I'm just totally mixed on. I mean, he's probably fine for a tournament because we just don't know what's going to happen. My worry is that his ADP is going to keep plummeting throughout the process. So he's someone I took a lot of early on in the 1 quarterback version, and now I'm kind of avoiding because I'm like, oh, I took a lot of David Bell and the testing, and my fear is he goes day 3. So we'll have to see. I think he's a very risky option, but I mean, the production profile in college was pretty immaculate. And then I like what you did at running back. It's kind of what I did. I think these drafts late is just fertile ground for running back. There are so many guys that are candidates to either be a starter for a large portion of the season or just a straight up handcuff and a good offense or totally unknown. So everyone that you took at running back are people that are on my radar where it's predominantly rookies. So I think you really, I mean, when you go 7 running back, you're just hoping if 2 of those, what do you take, 4 or 5 rookies? If 1 or 2 of them hits, then you're set. And that when you're only starting up to 3 running backs pretty much any week, you're really just hoping that one or 2 of these guys does something at some point. Since we don't need them competing with each other for spike weeks, we basically just like, hey, rolling the dice. There's tens of thousands of people in this tournament. Hopefully this guy gives me a few weeks early. This guy gives me a few weeks later. This guy gives me a few weeks in the middle. So I think what you did was balancing it out well, where I think Brian Robinson and Keyshawn Vaughn are locked into some type of workload next year. And then we've got the wild cards.
All right. We're getting some commentary in here from the viewers off the Schneid, a classic competitor here in the best ball streets. Got excited about AOK, but there's been people drafting Alberto Gugbanum. I mean, in the top 10, in the top 12, and I think that's too rich right now. I know that there are some satellite statistics like routes run and targets per route run that are good indicators for Albert, but at the same time, looking at the offense that he's in, we've mentioned it before. There's Judy, there's Sutton, there's Patrick, there's Hamler, there's Melvin Gordon out of the backfield, possibly. There's Javante Williams out of the backfield. And then, of course, Russ picks it up and runs it himself as a possibility. So I tweeted out that I thought that Albert O's range of outcomes is probably a ceiling at like Dawson Knox. Like he gets like a 12 to 15% target share, but does get the touchdowns and does have the efficiency with Russell Wilson. So I think like that's a ceiling, but the floor could be a little scary week to week if he doesn't score the touchdowns.
I haven't quite decided where I fall on him right now. I think I was trying to think of who I would for sure take him before. I would definitely take Albert O prior to Pat Freiermuth. And my reasoning for that is Pat Freiermuth, very crowded offense. He's probably the 4th option behind Deontay, Claypool, Najee Harris. So already Freiermuth, option number 4 in a bad offense. Albert O, maybe he's the 4th option. I don't really know what option he is. He's probably not super high up, but we know it's a much better offense and he's a much better athlete. Freiermuth is not a good athlete. He's very, very average. He was really buoyed by touchdowns. I think his target share at the end of last year was 13%. And I think that is a guy I would confidently take Albert O before. I think Ertz, Hunter Henry, those guys, I don't know. I think he belongs in that conversation. So I think it seems like I'm a little higher on him than you are. I like that he's been efficient when called upon. And then I think the biggest green light for him, obviously the quarterback upgrade, but was them giving up Noah Fant in the deal.
Yes.
I think that's actually a huge endorsement, is that where it's like, oh, what good player went back to the Seahawks? Oh, it could have been any position. Who was the marquee name?
Noah Fant.
Yeah, it was Noah Fant. So it's like, oh wow, the first round pick from a few years ago at tight end, Alberto, incredibly athletic, incredibly efficient in a small sample. So I think he actually has pretty monster upside. I think he's probably not going to hit it, but I do think he's a good candidate for kind of like that Eric Ebron season when he went nuclear with touchdowns. Robert Tonyan had that season. I think we could see a really big touchdown.
Well, that's
season.
why I thought the Dawson Knox comp as a ceiling is the right spot for him, because Knox wasn't getting the huge target share. But if Albert O gets open in the end zone, Russ is going to find him.
Yeah, I think Alberto, what he has over Knox even is he's even more athletic. Yeah. Knox is athletic. Albert O is he is an absolutely phenomenal athlete. He is a sub 4.5 40 time at the tight end position. That is very, very hard to find. So I think there's some potentially crazy upside. Probably not going to happen. But I think that's the case for me, at least, is why Freiermuth is line in the sand where I'm like, for sure would take him before Freiermuth. Is if you're looking at fourth-ish option in an offense, give me the much better, give me the guy in the much better offense. So,
yeah, I think the ADP will catch up pretty quickly. Wheeler's mentioning he's tight end 15. That will change over the next few days. All right. Well, this was a lot of fun, Josh. Really appreciate you taking time out of your evening. The sun is probably set for you already, but it's been great having you. And really excited, to continue doing these best ball drafts, because we see the ADPs change, and with the news, we can react to inefficiencies better, I feel like, than the market, especially immediately. So we anticipate news will continue to be going. And on Underdog Fantasy, if you're not using the promo code FFF, what are you waiting for? Like, download the app, make your deposit. They will match you up to $100, 100% match. So, Josh, you are one of the best follows on Twitter too. I just want to throw that out there because you have a great range of tweets. You give your threads. Like, if you want more content about the SuperFlex, Josh has laid out a beautiful thread about some of the research he's done in the SuperFlex Best Ball streets here on Underdog, but also, some spicy takes too. So we really appreciate you coming on tonight. Make sure you're following him at JLarky Tweets. Josh Larky, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast tonight.
Brad, thank you. It's always good chatting about best ball with you. We've done several drafts now at this point. I've seen you in several draft rooms, even when we're not streaming. And yeah, I think we ended up with some good drafts. We quarterback crowded out a few people. So I think there's already a few teams that are probably not a threat at this point. Billy's got quite the squad. So we're gonna have to watch out for the Chiefs quad stack. So let's hope that Kansas City signs a running back in free agency and drafts a wide receiver in the first round just to muddy up his CEH, Kelsey, Hill, Mahomes, triumvirate or quadumvirate. I don't even, whatever the word is.
We're making up words here.
Yeah. So his quattro. So it was a good time. Thanks for having me. Thanks to Fantasy Data for hosting this. Thanks to Player Profiler for letting me join on this type of thing. It's been good.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Have a great night. And I believe on Friday, Billy and I are going to talk about some players that we are feeling are overvalued and undervalued. And maybe by that time, we get some more news as well. So stay tuned. Friday evening, we'll have a special overvalued, undervalued show for you. And then there are some other special guests over the next week and a half, just like Josh. So if you love hearing about Josh, we're going to have, well, no one can match Josh Larky, but we're going to have some pretty special guests as well coming on the podcast. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. Make sure you're listening on the Apple Podcast, wherever you are. Have a great evening, everyone. We'll see you in the best ball streets.